There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim. Lead story today, grave of ancient elongated skulls discovered in Iran. That's close to the Levant. I call it Nephilim Central. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. We'll get into this and so much more right here on the Trail. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. And before I let you go, we've invested some of our money in Noble Gold. With the present financial situation the way it is, not a bad idea. Again, there's risks involved, but paper currency? Really? Okay, anyway, we'll see you on the other side of the break. All right, folks, is investing in silver today a good idea? Colin Plume from our friends at Noble Gold thinks so. We had Colin on the show last month, and the reason why I did this, they're a trusted sponsor, but I've invested my money with Noble Gold. A good portion of the cash that we had on hand, we converted into precious metals, and I'm not telling you to do anything that I'm not doing myself. Okay, so on the national desk, Colin explains there has been a huge sell-off of silver because of its low price right now. Silver is the most useful industrial metal out there, and demand is soaring for electronics and electronic cars, solar panel circuits, as the green agenda begins to speed up. As industries pick up after the pandemic supply chain issues, the trend down should reverse quickly and silver may rocket. Now that's, he doesn't have a crystal ball, nor do I, but it certainly could go up. Folks, don't miss this. Give the team at Noble Gold a call and join thousands of others, including myself, who've taken advantage of this blip in the market. They'll guide you through the process and make it easy for you. And this month, you'll get a stunning free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with a qualified IRA of $20,000 or higher. Folks, you can't go wrong with Noble Gold, and that's why we've put our money in with Noble Gold. I believe it may be the safest place to put your cash right now. Call the team, 877-646-5347, 877-646-5347, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. Folks, tell them L.A. Marzulli sent you. This is dated September 6th. It's an older post, but it came up on my feed. This is a top view of a skull. The first thing you'll need to look at here is there's no parietal plate that I see. There should be a sagittal suture running the length of the skull, but we don't see one. Now, the skull is badly cracked and fractured, but you would still see that suture. And this is what we see in the Paraka skulls over and over and over again. So let's walk through this. This is the area, Chega Sofla. It's in Iran. Very, very interesting. Not that far away, really, from the Levant. And I call this Nephilim Central because I believe when Joshua and Caleb went into the Promised Land, there was a diaspora of giants. Remember, I think it's Procopius who stated on the record that there were 2 steles on the north shores of Africa. What's that doing there? And it said this: we are they who fled from the face of Joshua the robber, the son of Nun. Because when Joshua and Caleb press into the Promised Land, these Nephilim tribes are there. And they realize that, wait a minute, this is the real God. We can't hold up against this. Remember when they take Jericho, which in my opinion is a Nephilim stronghold, they don't do anything. They just march around the city and then blow the shofars. That's all they do. And then the walls come down. The hand of God is all over this thing. Move, counter move, move, counter move. We see this, of course, in the Cosmic Chess Match. So this is a great drone shot. I think it's a drone shot. Burial excavation areas of Tol Chega Sofla. A tol is a site, a dig site. In Hebrew, it's tel. Tel Aviv. It's a dig site. It's an old archaeological site. So in Arabic, or I should say Farsi, Tol-i-Chega Sofla, and I'm probably butchering that. I don't speak Farsi, sorry. So what we see here is area A, C, and B, a dried gully. Here's a great shot, the overhead shot of the tombs that you can see here. And once again, we see this. We see elongated skulls. 4 of the 12 elongated skulls on Earth, skulls 2 and 4, appear to have more cranial volume than normal. And of course, we see this over and over and over again, between 25 and 30% more cranial volume. Something is going on. In my opinion, this is not the result of cranial deformation. So this is a cast of a cinnamon skull, and I'll move it here so you can get a good view of it. There's no sagittal suture here. Take a look at the orbits, which are about 20% larger than a normal human being. And the idea is modern day mainstream archaeologists insist that all this was done through cranial deformation, cradle headboarding, when they wrap the skull of a child and they elongate it. We're not disputing that. But here is the smoking gun right here. This is, and you've heard me talk about this, this is the foramen magnum. That should be here, in the center of the skull to balance the skull. So right off the bat, we've got anomalies in this particular artifact, which just don't make any sense at all. So what we see here is especially number 2, greatly elongated skull, lack of a sagittal suture. Moving right along, here's another one. This specific skull appears to have more cranial volume than normal. And I wrote the author of the article, and I said, did anyone turn the skull over? Once again, there's the smoking gun, and we have to thank Rick Woodward, our anthropologist on our team, who discovered that. He's the only person that I'm aware of that actually turned the skull over and checked out the position of the foramen magnum, and that was groundbreaking because up to that point, no one had ever done that we're aware of. And again, you can move the skull around, you can shape the skull through cranial deformation, through cradle headboarding. I understand that, but you can't move the placement of the foramen magnum. That thing is way off center. So something is going on, and as we point out in our DNA film, it's genetic. And we've got people that come on the record. They're doctors, they're surgeons, anthropologists, archaeologists, a whole multidisciplinary team that come on the record and talk about this. And folks, this is the result of some sort of genetic tampering, and it goes right back to my wheelhouse. This is the Nephilim, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I really don't think so. Why? Because our DNA, which is number 6, shameless plug, but check that out. If you've not seen that film, go to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Check out the DNA evidence. There's nothing else like it. And before I move on to another slide, I want to thank Brian Forrester, because Brian Forrester's video was the one that set me on the trail, and that's why we went to Peru. So hats off to Mr. Forrester, our battle buddy Brian, and he's down in Peru, and I'm not sure what he's doing, but be great to see him again. Anyway, this is what they say, comparing one of the Iran skulls next to one of the Paraka skulls, and we can see a definite similarity between the two. These natural elongated skulls feature much larger bones and eye sockets that are up to 50% larger than normal human skulls. They are also missing the sagittal suture, the fibrous connective tissue joints between the two parietal plates that run down the center back of our skulls. Many of these elongated skulls' cranial volume is up to 25% larger than conventional human skulls. A few skulls, such as the Chongo skull in the Inca Museum, has approximately 50% more cranial mass. I think that's exaggerated. I would put it more at 30, but I digress. Here's the key. Cranial deformation can certainly change the shape of a skull, but it cannot add more cranial mass or volume to a skull. Some of these elongated skulls found at Tol-i-Chega Sofla also appear to be natural elongated skulls as well. So it's great. That picture, hard to say where it came from. It could have been taken from one of our Watchers films. Wouldn't surprise me in the least, but whatever. So we're the only team that actually published information of the Chongo skull. This is the enigmatic Chongo skull. When we were taking DNA samples at the Inca Museum, all right, I asked the head archaeologist, I said, can we examine the Chongo skull? Why? Because up at that point, we knew about the foramen magnum. Rick Woodward had already told me about the placement of the foramen magnum and how that completely changed the equation. So we go in there, and you've seen the video on this. It's also, for the first time ever, revealed in toto, as it were, in the DNA film number 6. Please check it out. So this is it. Look where the placement of the foramen magnum is. It is all the way to the posterior, to the occipital plate of the skull. If it was any more back, if it was pushed any more, it'd be outside the skull. And you hear me in the film, I go, oh my God, it's all the way in the back, because it is. It's all the way in the back. Literally, if it's a few centimeters, it's outside the skull. And as we talk about in the film, this would necessitate a longer neck in order to balance the skull. So are these the remnants of the Anakim, the long necks, or the Horites? We don't know. It's a mystery. Could there be a relationship between what we see in Iran and what we see in Paracas? Absolutely. In fact, let's go back here, because you'll find this is really interesting. See the Persian Gulf? Guess where the Persian Gulf empties into? And that's how they might have come down, and they may have just completely left the area and eventually wound up on the shores of Paracas. That's conjecture. That rewrites history as we know it. But you know what, folks? Something is going on here. And it's amazing how the academics, the so-called academics, are in intellectual concrete, in my opinion. So they can't go against the prevailing narrative, or they'll be branded, conspiracy theorists. That seems to be the bucket that catches everything. If you differ from the official narrative, you, my friend, are a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, something is going on. There is a relationship, in my opinion, between what we see in Paracas, what we see in Iran and other places. Elongated skulls? Absolutely. It is not the result of cranial deformation, cradle headboarding, in my opinion. It is, in fact, genetic. And that's why our film on the DNA is so important, because not only do we talk about the DNA that we took 58 samples, but we show the results of it. And guess what? The origins of that are in the Middle East, Iran, the Black Sea, right? It's all there. And the information, it's just amazing how we have a hypothesis. We stick with the academia. We have a hypothesis. We go out and try to prove our hypothesis one way or the other. And when we get information that begins to prove it, we're instantly ostracized from the academics who really don't want to hear about it. Well, it's all contaminated. All of our DNA evidence was contaminated. How do you know that? How do you know that? In fact, people who actually look at the film and watch what we did were amazed at the protocols we used in the field. They were stringent. They were dialed in from our good friends up in Canada, the only lab right now who will take our DNA samples. And they stated on the record that the protocols we put in place to extract DNA were above board, first class. I'll say it, you can see it in the film, but we're all wearing hairnets, full-blown body suits, double sleeves, gloves, masks, glasses, boots, the whole thing. And every time we switched skulls, we went out of the room, got rid of those body suits, those lab suits, donned new lab suits, and blew each other off with compressed air. Then we went back in, took samples, and the moment we took the samples, remember, we would turn the skull over like this, and right at the foramen magnum, we would take a drill and get fresh. We would scrape some of the outer layer off, but then go in and get fresh DNA, and we would collect that in like a folded piece of paper like this, okay? We fold the piece of paper and then we dump it into a bag. And Chase Klotsky was instrumental in tagging and bagging all of our samples from both the ICA Museum, ICA, and of course, the private museums in Peru. Folks, there were 58 samples, 28 of them sequenced. Out of the 28, we found a preponderance of evidence that pointed to a Middle Eastern connection. We're not making this up. Why is it that the academics won't even look at it? And they won't look at it. They won't even discuss it. They just go immediately, oh, it's all contaminated. Oh, this is the result of cranial deformation. And we're name called. Well, why don't, instead of calling us loons, like one particular author did, and I won't mention his name or give him any credit, why point people to his website, right? But he wrote a hit piece on us and called us Marzulli and his team of loons. Let me get this straight. tenured archaeologists, anthropologists, medical professionals going down and looking at this. 3 different labs in the United States. That's a team of loons. Excuse me, sir, you're of a loon. Why? Because you don't like our evidence. You don't like our conclusions and what it points to. In my opinion, folks, it does point to a supernatural world, because if these are the remnants of a Nephilim tribe, and I truly believe they are, then it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative and the veracity of that. And you know what? There's a whole lot of people that don't like what this book says and that are vehemently opposed against it. Just saying. So I believe that these skulls that were found in Iran, and let's go back here. Incredible. I believe this is not the result of cranial deformation. I believe this is genetic, and this may be, in fact, a remnant of the Nephilim. And that's the 2,000-year-old baby skull that we unwrapped at Senior Wands Museum. We took, now this is amazing, we took hair samples immediately. Some of the hair fell off. We immediately tagged and bagged that, sent it off to 3 different labs. All of them put it at U2E1, which is Eastern European. Contamination? Of course not. But it's so easy to say that, right? Oh, it's contaminated. Oh, really? We're unwrapping it. The hair is in the mummy wrappings. We're taking the strands and putting it into a plastic bag. How is that contaminated? Please. They just don't like the results, because it rewrites history as we know it. It shows that people came to the Americas far in advance of good old Christopher Columbus. Just saying. Anyway, folks, the 15th is coming up, 4 days away. That will end our pre-sale. Please check it out. We've had a lot of response on that. UFO Disclosure Part 3, Close Encounters. We are working on 4. It will be released. Number 4 is on abductions. I would suggest buy 2 or 3. Give them your loved ones. Because when they show up, when my craft show up, and it's going to happen at some point, is the church here? Is the church not here? I don't know. I have no idea. There was a saying that I coined a few years ago: we go up, they show up. We go up, they come down. That may be exactly what happens, but I don't know. Nobody knows. All I know is that in Ukraine right now, where this whole war thing is going on, all the saber-rattling nukes and everything else, UFO flap is off the hook. I reported on that several weeks ago. So go to lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. You can get the pre-sale, say $5. We've got a bunch of different specials. You can get all 3. Pop the popcorn, bring your friends over. What are you waiting for? And once we get the DVDs, which should happen this week, we'll be shipping, and then it goes up to the normal price, which is $19.99. Before I go, we have a new feature, and you can get in on it immediately. Shoot us an email, questions@lamarzulli.net. Questions@lamarzulli.net. It's right there on the screen. Questions@lamarzulli.net. So our new format will be this. Monday is Supernatural Confrontations. Tuesday, which is today, is On the Trail of a Nephilim. Wednesday, our weekly UFO update. Thursday, Questions with L.A. Marzulli. Write your questions, and hopefully we'll get time to answer 10 or 15 of them. So once again, that's questions@lamarzulli.net. Friday, of course, once again, Supernatural Confrontations. If you have a supernatural confrontation, please shoot us an email supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Folks, let me tell you something. If you haven't seen yesterday's show, we're already at 10,000 hits, and it hasn't even been up 24 hours yet. It is the most visceral report of an encounter with a hybrid being that I have ever heard. Hands down. It is unbelievable. You're going to watch that testimony. It is absolutely unnerving. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for watching On the Trail of a Nephilim. Remember, there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of a Nephilim. Thanks for watching.
They got their knowledge from the heavens.
He saw it, said, whoa, that's a UFO.
This orb comes up and it's bright orange.
I'm not wanting to make full eye contact with these things. But from what I did see, when I did look at them, they're like they're soulless.
It was right directly above us right here, and then it started tilting and moving up like that.
All of a sudden I was being lifted about 3 feet off the ground. It was going slow. I was walking right underneath it.